tomatoes, peppers, and cucumbers. Now these are everyday foods, and I personally like tomatoes. You see, the thing about food in Africa is we thrive on food. Well, it's not just an African thing, it's an everywhere thing. The world is surviving now, has always survived on food, but then food production is diminishing. 39% of Cameroonians live below the poverty line. What that means is there are several households in Cameroon today who are unable to have one of those cucumbers. And that is a scary fact, because as the years go by, the statistics get worse. Someone is trying to make them better. But before we talk to our guest for today on The Tipping Point, let's hear on this report. One of the most basic of all human needs is food. Statistics show that Cameroonians spend about 38% of their disposable income on foodstuffs alone. With over 39% of Cameroonians living below the poverty line, food becomes a luxury for many people. Talk less of a 3-course meal daily. This is a worrisome statistic for a country with over 20% of its arable land and a huge farming population. Farming for many is still at subsistence level, and even at this, it is barely enough to feed some households. With the challenges of climate change, poor land policies, and insecurity, food production is seriously slow and low even for a regional giant like Cameroon. Basic foodstuff such as rice, oils, flour, tomatoes, all with a huge potential for success in the local market, are imported from abroad, while local farmers continue on a hand-to-mouth strategy. An urban household spends an average of 100,000 francs CFA monthly on food alone. If you multiply this with the houses in Douala, you realize food consumption produces or uses billions of francs CFA on a monthly basis. The end of the story is this. There is a huge market at home, but it is exploited by foreign producers while local farmers wallow in misery. For many startups in Cameroon, agriculture is a saturated field, but the figures rather show it is not adequately exploited and holds huge potentials for Cameroonians. Hello and welcome. Today's edition of the show is shot in a greenhouse, and we're thrilled and happy to have you with us. Our guest for today's edition of the show is CEO and founder of Greenhouse Ventures, the veritable Roland founder. I think when I add that adjective to your name, it almost sounds like a plant sprouting out of dry ground, resistant and resilient.
Thank you.
Great to have you on the show, sir.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for being here.
How are you today?
Wonderful, wonderful. Being here makes it even more exciting.
I understand you've been on the road a while.
We try.
Now, let me confess. When I spoke to you on the phone and we planned this, of course I looked into you a little. But the feeling I expected to get of a farmer close out. I mean, I didn't expect some guy with some nice sneaker shoes and all that up and looking cool like that. So, how does it feel to be young, energetic at your prime, and into farming? Something that in Cameroon, in as much as the bulk of our economy is based on this sector, is not something that people are very proud of. How do you feel to be pioneering?
You know, it's an excitement, but although it comes with a lot of obligations and responsibilities, to live up to the expectations of it all. But again, to your very first remark, one of the things that we are looking to promote and demystify is this whole notion about farmers. Farmers being dirty, being illiterate, being poorly dressed and all of that. Because I believe that the next wave of agriculture has been championed by young farmers. And there is no better way of championing that without making it look very sexy and very attractive. And I think that embodies everything that we do here right now, because we are changing the way farming has been done for centuries and centuries ago. We are making it look now more attractive, now more economic, and even more fashionable, because hey, these are the things that we do eat. Why don't they have to look that good. You know, it is sad to look at the image of farmers and then expect that they would grow good food for you. So I think all in all, going back to that initial question, is the fact that we are looking to change the regard that farmers have had and the perception that we've had on farmers. And we believe that once we can change that, a lot more will change, and that would have a ripple effect in the entire industry. And Greenhouse Ventures is at the very forefront of making sure that we commit to a change that becomes very stagnant. That's why Greenhouse Ventures was born.
Now, this is not traditional farming at all, and in your words, you're adapting to the trends. But why greenhouses? What's the advantage here that the bulk of farmers haven't realized?
So there are two things that have affected the agricultural industry. One is the production capacity, and two is the marketing aspects of it. That's why, you know, for years the farmers have not been included in the value chain of the produce. My grandma in Bengue there, who does tomatoes, will sell 1 kilogram there for 300 francs. By the time it gets to Machissandaga, he has been sold for 700 francs, and she has never been in the value chain of it. And she works the most behind the list in that value chain. So we have to change that, making it possible that each and everyone can actually get involved in that and actually get involved in the value chain. More so is the fact that we now realize that farming should not only be done in the rural areas. This is modern agriculture, this is urban farming. As you can see, to my left is a story building, to my right is a mansion, in front of us is a university. Where do you see farming? Have a farm in the middle, right? I mean, this lot could be used to build another mini state that would house students, but we're using it for farming. That's what we should be looking at right now. You have supermarkets that are sprouting up in and around town. Everybody's focused on the sale of produce, but no one is looking at the production aspect. So what makes this different is the fact that, one, we are able to grow crops year-round without any interruption. We're not bothered by the season. We are able to grow more per unit area. So one of the things you realize in here is the fact that our crops can bear more fruits per time than outdoor crops, and that's because here we control the environment, we control how well the crops are also being grown. In here we use less time, less energy, less water, less resources, and we get a lot more per time. So if I was to grow only tomatoes or cucumbers in here, I would harvest at least 8 times more than what we would harvest outside. And the fact also that we can actually grow crops in an organic nature or natural nature. So there are so many advantages that greenhouse agriculture outweighs outdoors. I mean, look at a country like Israel, it's a desert, but they have more agricultural capacity than Cameroon. Look at Holland, the same thing. Holland actually furnishes produce to all of Europe. How is that possible? Greenhouses. And why have we been so delayed in adapting to these changes? So I believe that what we're doing here today is just a way to ignite, you know, a movement into what we all desire as emergence, and this is what we call emerging agriculture.
So let's talk a little climate change. This is a global concept that, in my opinion, is not very readily accepted in China. I think that the reality is for climate change, whether scholarly or physically on the ground, have not been adequately grasped yet. Now, you're a farmer, you're experiencing this every day. This is a piece of land that you've been able to use. I can see pipes running around, so this is some irrigation happening. Now, how much do you think climate change is going to affect agriculture in the future and Cameroon's experience of agriculture?
Man, climate change is having a disastrous effect on the planet itself, and it's about time we begin to realize that and see how we adapt to it. The unfortunate thing is that we are stuck in the past. Our parents to do agriculture the way it was done years and years ago with the colors and the whole. We still have to travel 10 kilometers just to do farming. We have to try to allocate 10 plus hectares to be able to make, you know, any good gains in agriculture. What greenhouse farming brings in place is that it satisfies 3 areas of sustainability. 1, profits. 2, the people. 3, the climate. To explain to you how greenhouse agriculture helps in climate control is the fact that, simple analogy, plants take in carbon dioxide and give out oxygen, which we take in the oxygen and give out carbon dioxide. So in here we're having a kind of a closed reaction as it's happening. And carbon dioxide and also, these are what we call greenhouse gases, which of course, if allowed exposed to be exceeding in the atmosphere, they go and they block the ozone layer, and that's what causes global warming, right? But what this greenhouse does is that it contains greenhouse gases and feeds them to the plants, because that's what plants need. And that's why you see our plants in the back, they grow the way they grow healthy, they grow stronger, they grow tastier, and with less water content. So in terms of that, greenhouse agriculture has a very, very huge effect in how it can minimize the escape of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. Other things that you also consider is what you call carbon footprint. Carbon footprint is talking about the amount of carbon that you would expend if you had to leave from here to the market. You're driving, you're walking, you're giving account of that. So that's all pollution they put into the atmosphere. If, for example, anybody can have their farms in their backyard and can produce as much food that it can consume, that reduces carbon footprint for a lot of individuals. And that also reduces, of course, traffic and everything that's going on. So in terms of environmental control or how greenhouse technology helps in curbing greenhouse gases, I think it has a huge effect. There are countries that utilize greenhouse technologies, and they've seen a big reduction in greenhouse gas effect in those places. So we believe that, with time, we are certainly going to get to that, and we believe that, in a couple of years from now, greenhouse technology becomes a norm in farming, and that would have a tremendous effect in reducing greenhouse gas in the atmosphere.
Let's talk the business and the economics of agriculture. I have heard you personally say that you want to become one of Africa's billionaires, and you're hoping to do that in farming. But what got me is your vision to want to be able to sustainably feed Cameroon. Now, first of all, not judging your vision, how sure are you that you will get there?
Oh, very sure. It's just a matter of time. Time is all we need. Nothing else would stop us from that. People eat. They always eat. I mean, we live to eat and we eat to live. So we believe that we don't even believe there's always going to be a market. And looking at the very humble days that we started to where we are today, we are actually under pressure to feed and growing demand. The demand is a lot higher than we can supply them. So yes, talking about the desires of being a billionaire, I mean, that is very much sin, because when you look at every crop, every fruit that comes out of here, you put a dollar amount of it. One person once said, hey, take a seed of tomatoes, you plant it, it gives you 70 fruits, and each fruit has about 70 more seeds in it. Imagine each seed was 1 franc. You can see that 1 franc comes out with about 500, and you multiply that by 700, you're in the billions already, right? So that's what we're talking about. So I think to your exact question, what makes this profitable is very simple, and I'll take time to walk you through that. So this greenhouse measures 15 meters by 30, 450 square meters. In here, we're able to plant 1,800 crops, as you see them in here. Our mama in the village just believes that, well, I have 1 hectare of land, I buy seed for 1,000, I buy manure for 2,000, I have invested 3,000. She doesn't include, her time, the water, the depreciation, and all those things, how much you're able to harvest. So, but here, we do that very, very carefully. So just to explain to you again, here we have 450 square meters, we have 1,800 crops. Imagine we planted only cucumbers. Each of our cucumbers are optimized to give us between 12 to 15 crops, 15 fruits. Each fruit weighs a minimum of 800 milligrams, 800 grams, sorry, not milligrams. And at harvest, we are able to sell each of those fruits for about 500 francs each. So imagine you have 1,800 crops, and you're able to get, say, an average of 12 per plant. Now you multiply 12.
I need a calculator.
Right. You multiply the 12 times 1,800, and then you sell for about 500 francs each. That gives you that, and we are able to get a harvest every 3 months. That is where the money comes from. The beauty of also what we do is that we plant in a sequence, so we harvest in a sequence. So we can make sure that we are harvesting at every time of the day. Once we begin to harvest here, we can guarantee that every week we're coming out with at least 50 kilograms of produce. And by the time we get to the end of it, we are ready to plant another one. So if you look at the cucumbers here, that's what we've mainly done. We planted those ones later and this one's earlier. And that's what we do, and that's where the money is. The beauty of it also is that we don't have to go anywhere to sell. We already have markets right here. Our neighbors are our markets, and all we want to do is to build farms in each neighborhood and supply to those neighborhoods. And that's tomatoes, for example. When tomatoes grow, every flower has the potential to become a fruit, right? And when these flowers become fruits, sorry, start it again. When tomatoes grow, every flower has the potential to become a fruit. when you grow them outside, what happens? The rain falls on them, the wind blows, thunder, animals go by, even ourselves. So every time that friction happens, we lose flowers, hence we're losing fruits. But of course in here we can see that all of that is being conserved. So we are able to make it in such a way that in here I can have my tomato plants as we have them, give me a minimum of 70 fruits per plant. Whereas if you're doing it outside, you can't even have that. You can't even have it. The second aspect is that we do hand pollination manually. You know, we don't have to depend on the randomness of bees and nature. So we go flower to flower and we can pollinate that. So I can make sure that the more the flowers I get, the more I can pollinate them and the more fruits I'm getting. Here's the other aspect that makes it even more better in here. The third aspect is the fact that we have tomatoes that can grow up to 4 meters in height. And the more they grow, the more flowers they produce, it means the more fruits we are also getting from it. So this is information that, of course, we really haven't understood it, how it makes more sense, why greenhouses should make sense in here. Most people have to believe that with greenhouses you have to power them with electricity, with this and that. But God has blessed Africa with a lot of natural endowments and we're making use of them. Here, like I explained to you, our greenhouse is actually in a wind tunnel. So all the wind that blows from there blows everything. And that is also a big effect. We have a lot of sunlight.
Yeah.
It's unlike in the Western world where there are times when the sun is only for 6 hours a day and sometimes you have sun for all of that. Tomatoes, for example, we need about 16 hours of sunlight and here we get the average of it. And when we cannot have it, we have solar bulbs that will run on the night and will give us that. So the returns on the investments in here, they are quite enormous. But again, we need to get people to understand it. And to the other question which you asked about, people owning land, having more access to land than even cash. But again, if you go to credit unions today, credit unions have more land certificates than even the Ministry of Land and Survey, which is an oxymoron, right? People give away the land because they don't see the value of it. So we are now putting in place several mechanisms to make sure that people can start to see the value of their land. People can start to understand that this land, no matter how dominant it is, we can put value to it. And we want to find many ways that we could turn a lot of unused land, making it used for many more gains, mutual gains, I would call it.
So before we go, a few more questions, and I want to go with this. Now, Africa, we're natural people, and food is very close to our hearts. And I listened to one man talk, a preacher once, and he said, in Ghana, some kid came up with an idea with some machine on how to process fufu, or we normally have egba, where I come from, easily, and it didn't sell in the market because the tendency Africans have is you need to pound the fufu for you to have the feel. I mean, there's a way that it relates. Now, so we have this perspective that food needs to be natural. And the impression a lot of people get about the greenhouse is it's artificial. So tell us a little more. How natural or how artificial are the products from here? And should we be doing away with this meat? Can the world sustain itself on being natural?
You know, and again, that goes on the mindset and the mentality and the way our minds have been washed or brainwashed, you know, however you look at it.
See it.
Yes. In here, this is the most natural environment that you can have. Take for example, you have a kid that lives in a mosquito tent. That kid and a kid who lives outside a mosquito tent. The one inside would be living in the most natural environment. Because once you're outside, you're bitten by mosquitoes, what happens? You now go to the hospitals and you have to drink all these chemicals to clean that, but again, you're putting chemicals in. That's what happens outside. When the rain falls with fungi. Plants outside have been affected. That's why if you go farms in the rainy season, you see them, they are like blue because there's a lot of pesticides and insecticides that have been sprayed on them. But of course, that again is what causes a denaturing of produce once you harvest. In here we don't have that. You can see the leaves of what we have. You can see how good and clean they are. People come in here and you're able to harvest and eat right away. You don't have to worry about washing and all of that. But when you're growing it outside, there's everything. The rain falls with a lot of infections, you know, the wind blows, the dust and all of that. So this is the natural environment, as you can call it, because what do? You are able to conserve the microclimate for crops that grow in it and give them that environment which they need. My philosophy that I engineer all of this is the fact that unless we get to the point where we can humanize plants the way we humanize humans, then you can actually begin to see the returns on that. Treat plants like they communicate, like they cry, like they have emotions. That is what it is. Because what happens when these plants grow outside? For example, if you're growing in a place like Bamenda, at night you have extreme cold temperatures. During the day, extreme high. That variation, that changes, affects the physiological effects of the scrubs. And it's not good. Imagine you being yourself, it's like you're a homeless guy outside. So this is plants in the natural state. You give them a house, you feed them with water just as much as they need, you give them food just as much as they need, you give them sunlight just as much as they need. If me and you are outside, the sun rays, for example, what this greenhouse plastic does is that it allows certain rays of the sun to go in, and that's what these plants need. You don't, when they're outside, the entire ray hits them. And of course, you know me and you, we're out for so long you get cancer. Why? Because the rays burns your skin, and it's not every rays that you need. So that is what you have to understand now of which environment is more natural. This is it.
Roland, thank you very much for talking about this. Before we go, this is you. This is your venture. This is not the only greenhouse we have.
Sure.
We have greenhouses in Bamenda, we have greenhouses in Yam.
Correct.
And I hear in the pipeline you want to do a lot more in Guava. So it's possible. Now, this is my question to you. You say you don't want to be the only one. So what are you doing to get a few others or some of us to join in this venture? I mean, I would want to farm a little if you put some cucumbers in my house.
Sure, you know, this is the dream. You know, for me, it's not only that we can sell in the market, but also that you can actually auto feed yourself. You know, because again, about half the income goes in feeding yourself. And imagine if you have a farm in your backyard where you can come every evening, spend 30 minutes just to see how the crops are grown, and then you can harvest and eat. It is phenomenal. What we are doing is that we develop several models. So we even have a franchise model that says that, hey, you can have land, we bring the greenhouses, we put together some cash investments, we grow the farms, we sell, and then we split the funds. There are folks who will say, well, I just want my farm. Yes, we own a farm, and we're training a lot of people right now. So you can have your farm, we train people who will manage them for you. Or we also have people who are coming in just for cash investments. You can own a farm without actually having a farm, right? So you put in the cash investments, we can guarantee you any interest, the interest rates that we have fixed for the different farms that we have, and you can have that. Yes, right now we're working on a project site in Dubombari where we're looking to set up 20 mega farms that will give us an annual tonnage of about 700 tons. We need of several people who will get involved in that. Our end goal is us getting to a point where we can have many more farms in several areas around the country, but our end goal is being able to aggregate all the production from this and then feed them into a processing factory. Imagine Cameroon, imagine Africa, and no one has a processing factory. We're talking 1.2 billion people, and we have to import tomato powder from India, from China, to make tomato paste here, and then we consume, and then we call ourselves an agricultural economy. It makes no sense. 2016, Dangote was fortunate enough to set up a tomato processing factory, but he didn't understand that it takes also to feed that factory. He invested in 17,000 hectares of tomatoes 3 months after everything failed, simply because he didn't understand that tomatoes need to be in a more natural environment than just outside. And of course, the factory is now closed, and we believe that we have the answers to that. And that answer is how many more greenhouses can we build, how much production can we have at a time, and how well we can feed the processing factory to give us what we do. And that's our goal 3 to 5 years from now, and inshallah we believe very much that we will arrive to it.
Roland, thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you again, man. I want to
Thank you.
Hey, make sure you get your greenhouse sooner or later.
Will do.